West Africa is a region of great vitality and vibrancy, clearly reflected in its music and dance. And nowhere is the zest and vigor more evident than along the coastline of the countries that make up the region. The communities that live along and off the approximately 4,545 km long coastline of the region share several issues, concerns and problems as they struggle to earn a living in particularly difficult conditions. And these conditions don't get any tougher than in the region's artisanal fisheries sector, which processes and trades in a variety of fish, especially small pelagic species. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations estimates that there are about 1.8 million people engaged in fish processing and marketing in the West African region. Of these, the majority are women. If you live along the coast of West Africa, chances are you will encounter fish in more ways than one. Fish as a source of food and basic sustenance. Fish as a source of income and livelihood. Fish as a source of health and nutrition in the form of cheap and affordable animal protein. Fish as a commodity in trade across borders. And finally, fish as a symbol of common concerns amongst the communities of the region where fish eating is an intrinsic part of the local culture. Fish has long been an important part of the diet and culture of the West African region. Processed fish in the salted, dried, fermented and smoked forms has been traded within and between countries of the region for decades. However, despite the importance of this trade, neither is there a great deal of information on intra-regional fish trade, nor does the trade get reflected in statistics. This lack of information has also rendered invisible the women processors and traders. This is a pity as there is an urgent need to support intra-regional trade in artisanally processed fish. There are several reasons for this. For one thing, most of the major coastal fishery resources in Africa are concentrated in the northwest, from Morocco through Mauritania to Senegal and Guinea-Bissau, and in the south of Namibia. However, the major fish-consuming countries are in the Gulf of Guinea area, where population densities are higher. In this context, intra-regional trade can and does play an important role in ensuring a balanced supply of fish throughout the region. Low-value pelagic species of fish comprise an important source of affordable animal protein, making up 18% of the population's total animal protein intake. Yet, per capita fish availability in the West African region has declined from 12.8 kilos in 1990 to only 8.7 kilos in 1994. Consumption varies between 44 kilos per person per year in the Congo, 3 kilos per person per year in Guinea-Bissau, and as little as 1 kilo per person per year in Ethiopia. Per capita consumption is about 3 times higher in Western than in Eastern Africa. In Senegal, the average consumption is 26 kilos per person per year, while in the capital Dakar, it is nearly 70 kilos. In rural areas, consumption is noticeably lower than the national average. In such a context, intra-regional trade can lead to a more balanced distribution of fish. The region's existing cold storage and transport infrastructure is inadequate for trade in fresh and frozen fish. This is another reason to focus on intra-regional trade in artisanally processed fish. And finally, there are compelling socio-economic reasons for enhancing such trade. Fish processing and trading provide several employment opportunities, especially for the women of artisanal fishing communities. At the regional and sub-regional levels, some institutional efforts have been made to support intra-regional trade. The Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, has tried to harmonize trade policy and work out a common tax and duty schedule. This has not, however, met with great success. Some countries have been unwilling to implement some of the provisions suggested. ECOWAS now hopes to achieve a common monetary zone by 2004. The West African Economic and Monetary Union, or WEMU, has been more successful. WEMU has a common currency and has already achieved customs union with a common external tariff. Within WEMU, trade in approved industrial products as well as unprocessed goods and traditional handicrafts is completely exempt from duties and import taxes. Despite these efforts, most of the region's fish processors and traders face several obstacles. These were highlighted at a recent workshop on problems and prospects for developing artisanal fish trade in West Africa, held at Dakar, Senegal, from 30th May to 1st June 2001, and at a subsequent West African Processed Fish Fair on 2nd and 3rd June. The workshop brought together 64 participants from 13 countries of the region. The 3-day workshop focused almost exclusively on the women of the artisanal fishing communities of West Africa. Most of the women who attended were directly and personally involved in fish processing and trading on a small scale. Many had experience in cross-border fish trade, which was the primary focus of the workshop. It provided a unique space for these women fish processors and traders to meet with their supporters and discuss the main issues that concern them. And these are varied. For a start, there are far too many customs and other checkpoints in the region. For example, between Lagos and Abidjan, a distance of 992 kilometers, there are around 70 checkpoints, or 7 checkpoints for every 100 kilometers. Often, women are needlessly harassed at these checkpoints. Roughshod inspection sometimes leads to spoilage of their fish products. The women, many of whom are illiterate, are also burdened with tedious paperwork and complex formalities, not to mention monetary extortion. Transporting the fish products is relatively expensive, also because of the high cost of fuel. There is not enough equipment and infrastructure for processing and storage of products. These days, it is also common for processors to get their fish supplies from cold stores that stock fish from industrial fishing vessels. Often, it is an expensive process. Moreover, when the access is mediated through middlemen and wholesalers, the women processors lose control over their supply of fish for trade. Unhygienic practices and the use of chemicals for preservation spoil the quality of processed fish. Women processors find it hard to get credit at low rates of interest. There is a general lack of information and awareness on market prices and the administrative requirements for trade. Although vendors are required to pay market taxes, the facilities that exist at the marketplaces are inadequate. There is neither space nor shelter available for vending, while water, sanitation, and security are all absent. In many cases, there are no proper title deeds for the processing sites, even though they have been traditionally used by the region's women for generations. They are thus always vulnerable to displacement by development and tourism activities. Another problem the women face is wastage and post-harvest losses. Even existing techniques of processing can be made more fuel efficient and less harmful, both to the environment and to personal health. And finally, marine fish resources are progressively depleting. This is partly due to overfishing by foreign trawlers, often operating under fishery access agreements. One significant intervention in the area is the Sustainable Fisheries Livelihood Programme, funded by the UK's Department for International Development, DFID, and executed by FAO in partnership with 25 countries of West Africa. At a session on strategies for the future, the workshop participants came up with 3 broad suggestions. First, there's a need to create strong organizations of women processors and traders at the local and national levels. Second, there must be a network of women fish processors and traders at the regional level to take forward the issues raised at the workshop. Third, national, regional, and international NGOs and development organizations working in the West African region must collaborate and support these processes. In a culmination of sorts, the Senegal workshop produced a statement that expressed the participants' commitment to work together to sustain and promote artisanal fish processing and trading activities within the region. A great deal of action took place outside the workshop as well. Most of the interaction amongst the participants happened during the field trips and at the fair. The trips were also business opportunities. At the 2-day fair, delegations from the 13 participant countries displayed processed fish products. Trade and business enquiries continued at the fair too. The Senegal workshop and fair convincingly demonstrated one thing. It is certainly possible for the dynamic women of West Africa to develop stronger linkages with one another and boost intra-regional trade. But for that to happen, they need the right support and policy environment. With these, they will be able to ensure food security for the region, a diversified and sustainable livelihood from the artisanal fisheries sector, and larger regional integration. These sentiments and hopes were reflected in a poem called The Tireless One, specially written for the workshop by Ibrahima Lakil Diakite of the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture, Guinea-Conakry. Translated from the French, it talks of the tireless one who feeds our people and doesn't count the cost, the woman who comes home late in the joy-filled evenings, the author of her life and whose body exhales all the perfumes of the earth.